Okay, it's 1:05. Why don't we get started? My name is Scott Martin. I'm the Research Director at Captivate Network, and I'll tell you a little bit about Captivate Network, just a couple minutes, and then what I'd like to do is get right into our brand study results, and we'll of course tell you the methodology and where the study comes from. Just so you all know, I've muted all your lines, so there's no reason to put yourself on mute or anything like that. One of the things that I'll be talking about today is all the leading brands in the telecommunications industry, whether it's service providers or handset device makers or providers. We'll be covering 4 different key traits of those brands, and I'm excited to share those results with you today. We'll talk about brand ratings, we'll talk about brand attributes, brand consideration, and brand usage. And this is going to be among white-collar workers across America. But before we get into that, I want to first tell you a little bit about Captivate. Captivate Network is the leading digital media company providing custom relevant content, which includes news and information and entertainment, to millions of upscale consumers throughout the U.S. throughout the workday. Now, one of the things that Captivate's best at is delivering not only relevant information, but information that's updated throughout the workday. And we do it primarily in high-rise office towers. We have over 10,000 screens throughout elevators in those office towers, and we cater to on-the-go professionals that are typically upscale white-collar workers. And I'll tell you a little bit about their demographics and their lifestyle and their propensity for all sorts of devices in the telecommunications industry. Our audience has an average age of 39 years old. They're primarily men and women equally. The best thing about Captivate Network when you're in high-rise office towers is you're reaching employed adults. In fact, if you look at the income of our adults in our network, they have nice, desirable incomes of $107,000 on average, and they're very well educated, primarily college grads. Now, in most media, you're not able to reach an average age under 40 years old, and in most cases, you can't reach average ages under 50 years old. So Captivate has primarily young professionals, and that's great for the telecommunications industries, because those young professionals are the first to acquire the latest technology and upgrade the technology that they have. And we'll tell you some stats about technology and telecommunications in the following slides. The lifestyle and the mindset of Captivate's viewers and our audience is one that needs technology. They rely on it every day to get through their busy lives. In fact, our tagline at Captivate is "Power to the Busy." Our goal is to empower those busy professionals, ones that are trying to balance their personal lives and consumer lives with information and content to help them get through their day and their week. While they rely on technology as well, you see some of the statements on the screen. I don't know what I did before the internet and cell phones. Life moves too fast to stay out of touch. These are people that need to stay connected. They have a lot of connections, both socially and through technology, that we help advertisers communicate with. If you look at some of their usage, for example, 94% use apps every week, 65% use apps every day, 78% of our viewers have smartphones, which is double the national average, and just about 7 apps a month are downloaded. So they're real heavy users of technology, smartphones, and certainly apps. As far as switching service providers, they do that a lot more than the average person as well. You got about 23% that plan to switch their service next year. Why? Because to get the latest and greatest technology sometimes requires that you're changing service providers. We have 1.9 million viewers that are purchasing technology throughout the workday. So you think of the workplace as a place where you're focused on your business and your task at hand, but the fact is all of us take breaks throughout the workday to handle some of their personal necessities, and that includes buying technology, researching technology, and one of the most important things is talking to your coworkers about technology. A lot of recommendations and referrals happen at the workplace. If you think about office towers and a company's office, that's really where the original social network came from, is the water cooler. So we're proud to put a lot of advertising on our network that causes and creates a stir and discussion around different technology. If you look at the cell phone activities that are growing among white-collar professionals in the United States, downloading video games has grown 120% since 2010. Streaming video clips has grown 114%. And then, of course, music is still on the rise, consistently growing. GPS navigation is increasing 75%. And then email and other internet features also on the rise. So among the public, most of these things are growing as well. But among Captivate's white-collar working audience, they're growing much faster. Again, because of these viewers' reliability, reliance on technology to get through their day and balance their lives. I mentioned the word of mouth that happens in the workplace. Well, 67% of viewers say the work colleagues referrals and recommendations influence their buying decisions. We see that all the time, whether it's your peer, whether it's your boss, or whether it's your subordinates. We see their recommendations having a lot of influence at the workplace, sometimes as much as even their own spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend. There's a lot of trust at work when it comes to recommendations about technology. One of the things we do with Captivate Research as we transition over now to the research is we measure campaigns on our network. Most campaigns are anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks long, reaching everyone every day at work, getting a big effective frequency to help convert those viewers into buyers of their products. Well, we help measure the effectiveness of those campaigns through research, and we measure drive to web as a key response mechanism to campaigns in the elevator. We measure lift in awareness, we measure response rates, word of mouth, and increases in purchase intent, all as a way to help our advertisers not only judge the effectiveness of workplace advertising, but also to give them insights about their brands, which we're about to do here. One of the key things that I want to tell you about is where this research comes from and came from for today's seminar. It's called Office Pulse. This is Captivate's research brand, Office Pulse. You can see more of Office Pulse on the web if you do a search for Office Pulse or go to captivate.officepulse.com. You can learn about all the research that's available. It's featured in many leading publications, even on TV. If you look at the logos on the right, whether it's Forbes, Wall Street Journal, NBC, or Fox, or Huffington Post, even on the Today Show with Kathy Lee, they're using and talking about our research quite often. We're proud of this research, and it comes from a leading panel of white-collar professionals, all that have been recruited over the last several years to answer questions about their buying decisions and their thought processes and their actions and relationships at the workplace. So it's not Captivate related, it's a blind panel. These are people that are just taking work surveys, but they do it on behalf of a lot of our advertising customers. And I put some of those customers on the slide, whether it's Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, BlackBerry, or Samsung. These are all people that I provide research to, in addition to providing campaigns on Captivate, in addition to many others. So just wanted to let you know a little bit about the panel. The good news is they're very representative of white-collar professionals across the country here in the United States, where our panel is located in the top 12 of the top markets, including New York, Chicago, LA, Boston, DC, Houston, Dallas. We have many of the top markets covered with this panel. And the sample size you're going to see is a nice size sample. In our December 2010 study, which is the first telecommunications study we did, almost 600 respondents. In July of 2011, which was the second telecommunications study we're going to talk about today, over 500 respondents. December and March, most recently in March 2012, almost 600 respondents. So a nice sample size for you. The brands that we're going to cover are all located on the right. And just to remind you about our panel, not only are they white collar, they're employed, educated, higher incomes, all coming from the top market. And our goal in this study was to ask them about the leading telecommunications brands, and that includes service providers as well as the device manufacturers and makers. So we're going to start today with brand consideration. I'm going to change the view to full screen for you all so you can see your particular brands. And let's go to the first slide. And we'll talk about this one for a minute just so you understand how to read it all. We asked the question, in the next 12 months, which of the following brands are you considering using? So this is brand consideration for the following 12 months. I put across an average, a dotted line across around 15%. That's the average of all the brands that are being considered, is approximately 15%. Apple, AT&T, Verizon, Samsung are all currently over that consideration average of 15%. And you can see in the different colored bars, green going back to December 2010, gray to July 2011, pinkish maroonish back to December 11, and then most recently in blue, March of 2012. You can see how those trends are shaping up. So Apple's consideration has increased quite a bit, from 39 to 50%. So out of all white-collar workers in America, approximately half of them are considering Apple in the next 12 months. AT&T is pretty steady, around 36%, not changing drastically over the last 4 surveys. Verizon most recently dropped from 43 down to 33% from December 2010 to March 2012. So Verizon has some things to watch here. Samsung, very steady consideration, approximately 1 in 5 white-collar workers considering Samsung. T-Mobile, 14% most recently, which is consistent with their 4 studies where we've measured them. And Sprint, very strong at 14%. BlackBerry is seeing the most significant decrease, from 30 to down to 13, so losing about half of their share of consideration. And then HTC is the other leading brand in this slide at 12%. So that's consideration, and we'll look at a couple more brands before we get into brand rating. Again, the average of 15% is across the top, and these are some of the smaller brands in terms of share of consideration among white-collar workers. Google is at 10%. Motorola has dropped a little bit from December of 2010 down to 9%. Nokia has been steady around 5% during the last 3 surveys. Metro PCS, US Cellular, Cricket, Garmin, Virgin Mobile, and Alltel are all too small of a percentage to really identify any trends. But I will notice and point out that none of the above is currently at 13%, which means 87% of all white-collar workers are considering some of these brands. Why is that important? Well, we touted earlier in the presentation that this audience of business professionals is ripe for smartphones and telecom service providers, and that's proven out here with 87% in the market for your product. So that's something we always watch, and it looks like it's very consistent. Brand rating trends are going to show individual brands and which ones are trending the right way and which ones are trending the wrong way or holding steady. So we'll start with Verizon as the first brand we're going to look at. And this just shows their positive brand rating, which is an aggregate of their very good rating and their good rating. So currently their positive brand rating is 73%. And the way we ask the question is based on everything you know or have heard or experienced, how would you rate Verizon? Simple as that. Very simple question, but telling us some important results. They peaked back in December of 2010 at 79%, currently at 73%. So not a major drop, but something to watch there. If you look at how they compare to the industry average, which is the line chart that's going across the screen, they're well above average. The current average brand rating in the telecommunications industry is approximately 45%. So Verizon's positive brand rating of 73% is well above the industry average. And you can also tell by that line chart where things are trending, up or down. So Verizon's in great shape here. They're very good. 5 out of 5 rating here is very strong at 36%, which is well above the average. Their good rating also. Their average, poor, very poor ratings are all below average, which are all great signs. And the last thing I'll point out is never heard of score. This is your total awareness. Is great for them. Obviously their never heard of numbers are close to 0. So everyone's heard of Verizon. And we'll look at this for each and every brand. I'll point out Sprint next. If you look back to 2010 in December for Sprint, they were well below average in terms of positive brand rating. Well, as the industry's come back down and Sprint's held steady in terms of their positive brand rating, they are now right at approximately that industry average. So Sprint not losing any ground, and the rest of the industry is coming back down to where they are. Their very good rating needs some work, though. It's a little bit below average. So Sprint has a little bit they need to do, moving it from an average brand to a very good brand. T-Mobile, similar to Sprint in terms of trend, they've remained relatively flat on their positive brand rating, hovering right around the industry average. For AT&T, I would argue they're trending in the right direction now, from below average in December of 2010 to now above average in 2012. 52% of all white-collar professionals giving AT&T a positive brand rating. Most of that is in the good response. So there's work to do here to get the brand rating up to very good. Next is U.S. Cellular. U.S. Cellular's brand rating is trending in the right direction from 18% a couple of years ago, now up to 22%, but still work to do, and that's primarily because not enough people have heard of the brand. There's still 1 in 5 white-collar workers that haven't heard of U.S. Cellular. Of course, that may be due to regional characteristics of the brand, but that's something to keep a look at. Metro PCS also has approximately 70% that have never heard of their brand, so there's some awareness that needs to be driven there. But in terms of trends, they remain steady in terms of their different brand rating responses. Cricket is trending in the right direction from 60% awareness now to 70% awareness, but most of that is accomplishing a brand rating increase in the average category. So Cricket, can certainly have some improvement in the good or very good department in terms of brand rating. For Virgin Mobile, they have good awareness at 90%, and their positive rating is about 1 in 5 give it a positive rating. For Alltel, you have about 68% awareness, and their positive ratings in the 10% range. Motorola has great positive brand rating at 55%, but that's a significant drop from the end of the year in 2011. So it's recently dropped from 64 to 55%. Most of that happened in the good rating, from 44 to 38 most recently, and moving it into the average category. So there's some concern here in the recent survey that Motorola is starting to trend in the wrong direction. So that's something certainly to stay tuned for. And for anyone on the phone that has a brand that we're measuring, if you would like to get follow-up information and certainly have us dive in deeper to look into this brand and specifically what demographics change the most or what parts of the country change the most, we're certainly happy to do that for you. So please follow up with me. My number is on the bottom of the slide, my email and phone number, or follow up with your Captivate sales representative if you have someone that calls on you or that you work with, and we'll be happy to get that information to you. For Nokia, there's been somewhat of a steady drop in their positive brand rating from 59% positive brand rating in 2010, now all the way down to 48% in 2012. So that is something to watch. It looks like primarily it's not an awareness change, it is a change in ranking. People now ranking their brand as average more and more each year. So Nokia is showing some clear trends here that need to be reversed. For BlackBerry, it's similar to Nokia except a little more dramatic. BlackBerry's brand rating has dropped from 82 to 58% steadily over the last 4 surveys. So that's something BlackBerry, I'm sure, wants to learn more about, and we're happy to do that if your BlackBerry's on the phone. Most of that drop took place in the very good category, where it was 39% a couple of years ago. It's now down to 20%. Apple is one of the brands that continues to show increases in brand rating from 86 to 89%, so a percentage point or two each quarter, and most of that is in the very good range, so they're changing for the positive and at the highest levels. For HTC, I would argue their brand rating is pretty consistent. They had one great quarter in December of 2011, but always over 50% in terms of positive brand rating. And their awareness, where it used to be 73%, is now at 82% awareness. So HTC is looking good and steady. And Samsung is also steady, at least in the last 3 surveys that we've completed among telecommunications brands. The first study in December 2010, they had exceptional scores, which immediately dropped, but they've leveled off most recently and are showing good signs. For Garmin, a different story, where in the 2010 survey they had a very low rating at 42%, quickly corrected, and over the last 3 surveys they've been right at 2/3 of white-collar professionals, giving them a positive brand rating. Google we also measure, and this would be in the cell phone device category. We measure them at 66% positive brand rating and pretty steady brand rating, so no changes, significant changes one way or another for Google. The next set of slides, I want to show you some industry leadership positions for different attributes that we measure. So things like quality or customer service, or even we measure a cool factor or my kind of brand factor. These are attributes that we measure across many different industries, so they're not custom to the telecommunications industry. These are pretty general attributes, but they tell us a story as we look at each survey and how they change each quarter. So we'll get into those, and I'm going to rank them in order by brand. So on the left-hand side of the screen you'll see the lowest ranking, and then the top on the right-hand side of the screen you'll see the top ranking for each brand. The colors are going to change a little bit on the chart, so I'll read them off to you if it's too small. Let's start with the number 1 attribute. This was named by most people, as a reason to buy or recommend any of these brands. So the way the questions asked are, what are the most likely reasons to buy or recommend Apple, Verizon, AT&T? And what I'm showing you is the percentage of people that said cost. Cost could be, in their mind, the cost of their data plan. It could be the cost of the device. It could be the value that the brand gives them. So again, these are general terms, and the first one is around cost or price or value. So among the people that answered for Cricket, they were the highest ranking to say cost was the reason they use Cricket. Of the people that said Metro PCS, they had the highest percentage of people that said cost for Metro PCS. And then so forth for T-Mobile, US Cellular, Virgin, Altel, Sprint. Those are all the ones that were above the industry average of about 28–29% that said cost was a reason for recommending or referring or using a brand. So these are clear attributes, and one of the most important attributes measured, because this is where we most often get the response, cost is a reason for recommending brands. So these are in order by ranking. So cost was number 1 to recommend a brand. Number 2 was availability. And availability or number of locations can mean 2 different things. It could be cell phone network coverage. It could be store locations where I'm able to buy that device. It could be availability where I can get the latest and greatest upgrade. So there's many different perceptions among respondents about what availability or locations mean to them. But in terms of ranking, AT&T is number 1 for availability or locations. Verizon is 2, Altel is 3, Sprint is 4, US Cellular is 5, Metro PCS is 6, and then Virgin Mobile is 7. Those are the 7 brands that were above average for availability, locations, or coverage. So that's the second most important attribute that was mentioned among all of our respondents. Number 3 was reliability. And this is one of the rare cases where one brand stands above and beyond everyone else. And in this case it was Verizon on the far right of your screen. So Verizon was number one in terms of reliability. They had the highest percentage of respondents that said the reason they buy, use, or recommend Verizon was because of their reliability. Apple was number two, but you'll see there's a significant decrease from Verizon when you move to Apple. So if Verizon's on the phone, you have a clear advantage among all other brands in terms of your reliability. Samsung is number three, BlackBerry's number four, Google's number five, and then Motorola and at&t are just a little bit above the industry average, which is about 22% reliability. The fourth one I'll mention is quality, and this time Apple has a clear advantage on quality. So if Apple's on the phone, you're thought of among white-collar professionals as the clear winner for Apple. You had the most highest percentage of respondents say that's the reason they buy, recommend, or use Apple. Samsung, HTC, Motorola, Google, BlackBerry, Nokia, Verizon, at&t, and Garmin are all just above the average there, which is about 23%. Next one is customer service. So as we look at ranking in terms of importance this year to recommend or buy or use a brand, customer service is still important, but not as important as some of the previous ones we went over. And T-Mobile has an advantage here for customer service, followed by Apple, BlackBerry, at&t, Sprint, US Cellular, all above average brands for customer service. And finally, the last two traits that I measure, last three traits, are reputation, where Apple and Google, BlackBerry still has a strong reputation, Samsung, Motorola, HTC, Verizon, at&t, all above average reputations. Cool factor is next, and there's only 4 brands here that have above average cool factor, and this is important to measure because of the word of mouth. I mentioned in the workplace, as you look at the influence of your peers or even your boss in the workplace, there's a certain level of envy. In fact, some of the research that we've had published in major magazines and newspapers like the Wall Street Journal are around technology envy in the workplace. As you look at that envy, there's a cool factor that one gets or one may perceive in others, and in this case, in terms of brands with cool factor, it's Apple and Google, HTC, and Virgin Mobile that all have it, and therefore there's a good chance you can take advantage of it in the workplace. So if you want more information on this, please let me know. And then finally, my kind of brand. During these times with a volatile economy, the best thing brands can do is build close relationships with their users or consumers, and the my kind of brand factor is something we've measured now for a number of years, and we feel it's important analysis for each brand to make sure that they are resonating with their consumers or potential customers. Apple is leading for my kind of brand, followed by Google, HTC, and Samsung. So similar to having a cool factor, but even more important in some cases to make sure you're relating to the right people, and these people are relating most to the white-collar workers. Finally, in terms of attributes, I'll show you the trends for each brand and each attribute, and we'll show it over the last 4 surveys. We'll also show you the industry average for those attributes, so you can see how each brand fares. For example, we'll start with Verizon. Verizon, on the first attribute, availability or location, or in the mindset of a telecommunications survey, maybe about coverage, they do above average, and you can see their percentages match kind of the trend, where it was down in 2010, went up in 2011, back down at the end of 2011, and now kind of flat in 2012. Well, that's exactly what Verizon's brand did. It went from 35 to 40, back down to 34, now up to 36. So they have equally above average in all those surveys as one of their key differentiators is their availability, location, or coverages. There's some work to do for cool factor. If Verizon was looking for a cool factor, being a low cost or value provider is certainly something they're not in terms of meeting the industry average. They do have just slightly above average customer service. If you look at their quality, it's above average, and if you look at their reliability, we mentioned earlier they were number one in that regard. Well, you can see it here, way above the industry average at 51%. And then finally, reputation, where they used to be slightly below average, that's regained some steam in the last two surveys, and now they're slightly above average for reputation. So this is some of the most important information that we have, and again, if you want to see this information run for different demos, whether it's early adopters, or if you want to run it by gender or by income, we have the availability to do that for you. Just contact me or your Captivate salesperson. Sprint has a leadership position in the cost area, and that's trending in the direction, an upwards direction at 42%. For T-Mobile, also have a leadership position under cost at 46%, which has been pretty consistent over most of the surveys. Also have a leadership position in customer service. If you look at AT&T, just like Verizon, they have availability and location as a key differentiator versus the rest of the industry. But that's really their only differentiator. Everything else is either below average or at average. So if AT&T were to look at this, I would say to them, if you're on the phone, having above average attributes in addition to your availability, location, or coverage should be important to you, and this is something to look at further and certainly go in deeper to take a look. We'll be happy to do that for you. If you look at US Cellular, they have a leadership position in cost at 46%. That's been trending upwards over the last few surveys. And also, as we look at this data, we'll see that the cost, or having a low-cost solution or a value proposition for white-collar professionals, is important, even more so this year than other years. It was the #1 attribute that was mentioned among all the brands, and it looks like there's a logjam in terms of the brands and in terms of how many people provide that low-cost brand perception. So just like AT&T, for US Cellular, there may be other attributes that you want to focus on in your messaging and your campaigns, your advertising, to help that out. It looks like your coverage or availability or locations are above average, and that could be positioning that you want to grow. For Metro PCS, they joined the logjam of being a low-cost provider, pretty good availability or locations and customer service. For Cricket, 55% said they chose or would consider Cricket based on their cost. Virgin Mobile cost at 44%. So as I mentioned, there's a logjam of brands that are providing the perception for low cost or value, and therefore, because of that competitiveness in the industry, there may be other attributes of your brand that you want to message or position out there in addition to your value proposition. For Alltel, availability and location is strong, as is their cost attribute. For Motorola, reliability was above average in December 2010. It's leveled off a little bit over the last several surveys, as their reputation has. Their quality is still above average, and everything else is at average or slightly below average. For Nokia, very synonymous with the rest of the industry, just about average in every measurement that we do, except for quality. About 33% is a place to maybe look for Nokia to take advantage of the competition. And finally, BlackBerry. We saw BlackBerry's consideration go down. We saw their brand rating go down, but people here still rate them as above average for reliability. So for BlackBerry, if you want people to buy, use, or recommend you to others, reliability and reputation and even quality are still above average, and certainly things to focus on. For Apple, we saw a great consideration and brand rating for Apple. It looks like the cool factor and the quality are the main reasons for that. And while the rest of the industry's reputation is going down slightly each survey, Apple still has a strong reputation, well above the industry average. HTC has a cool factor we mentioned earlier, but they also have quality. For Samsung, it's about quality and reliability. For Garmin, it's about reputation at 18%, a little above average there, and holding steady and growing in some cases. Everything else is synonymous with the rest of the industry. And then we have Google. Google, we saw, has a lot to offer in terms of attributes. None of them are way above the industry average, but there's several that are above the industry average. So cool factor is one, quality is another, reliability and reputation. There's many different things here. My kind of brand, where Google, has the perception of white collar professionals as being above average for a lot of different things. Last couple sections I want to talk about involve a question around past 12 months usage of these brands. So again, for the service providers like Verizon, AT&T, this is in the white collar professionals mindset. And over the past 12 months, who did you use, which brands for service providers? And then for the devices, people like Nokia, BlackBerry, Apple, they're thinking more about the devices. So there's a little mixture of the two in here, but I want to show you the usage over the past 12 months, and then we're going to look at retention over the past 12 months. So we'll start with usage, and this is survey over survey usage, where we measure the previous 12 months. AT&T is very consistent at around 45%. Say they've used AT&T over the past 12 months. Apple has grown considerably, just like their consideration has, just like their brand rating has. Here they've gone from 21% usage up to 37% usage. Verizon, where they had a good consistent consideration, a good consistent brand rating, is starting to show decreases in usage, and that's something Verizon should be noting here specifically. BlackBerry's decrease in usage matches some of the previous decreases we saw. Samsung holds usage among 1 in 5 white collar workers, as does T-Mobile, and Sprint right around 15%. For some of the smaller brands, the differences are too small to say they're statistically significant, but Google's around 9%, Nokia's at 6%, some of the smaller ones are anywhere from 1 to 4. And just to point out again, not only are the white collar workers in America have a high consideration set for telecommunication brands, but their usage now has gone from 90% to 94%. So growing use of telecommunications products and services for sure in this industry. Last section I want to show you is about loyalty. So we simply take the people that have used brands over the past 12 months and run those against how many still consider those brands in the next 12 months. So it's a good way to judge loyalty or retention, and many of the brands that I work with hold this information as very valuable for their business and looking at how their relationship management's working, how their retention plans are working. So let's look at it, and we're just going to analyze the major brands, and we're going to start first with Verizon. So the way you read this slide is, let's go to the biggest number here, Verizon consideration. So this just says in blue, 73% of the people that used Verizon last year are considering Verizon in the next 12 months. That's a slight drop from the 80% over the previous survey. If you're wondering where that consideration shifted to, the drop of 7%, 6% of it may be Apple, 4% may be Samsung. So you can see not only your Verizon's retention, but also where that consideration may be shifting to. Next brand we're going to look at is Sprint. So Sprint's users, or previous users, about 61% are considering Sprint in the next 12 months. That's a drop from 68% a couple of surveys ago, so 68 to 64, now down to 61. That could point towards a trend and something for Sprint to take note of. And of course you want to look at where that share may be going of consideration. And once again, it's Samsung, Apple, are the two main players there, maybe a little bit for Nokia. So Sprint has some things to notice here too, and again, if Sprint's on the phone, let me know, or your Captivate salesperson know, and we can run some more numbers for any customer defections. T-Mobile has a consistent consideration of 55, 55, and then most recently in this current survey, 58%. So they appear to be remaining strong in terms of their current customers' consideration in the next 12 months. Next brand we'll look at is AT&T. AT&T, although we saw some strong numbers from them in terms of general consideration and brand rating, retention or consideration among their existing customers has been on a decrease over the last couple surveys, from 73% to 64%, now down to 61%. So that's something that AT&T may want to take note of. Motorola, which is going to be on the far right, has a giant leap of 13 percentage points in terms of their current customers that are considering Motorola, 41 to 54% most recently. And Nokia saw a similar jump from 20 to 34% most recently. So these are ways that we analyze and look for trends in retention and defection. BlackBerry, again, showing the biggest decrease from 61 to 48 to 42% most recently. Those are current customers that are going to consider BlackBerry in the next 12 months. If you look at where they're going, it could be a whole array of different brands, maybe even some of the smaller brands with a smaller share of consideration. For Apple, one thing I'll note, if Apple's on the phone, we've seen your brand consideration grow quite a bit and your ratings grow, but the growth, it looks like, is going to be coming from new customers, not from existing customers. So you know, that's a good sign if that's the brand's objective, is to grow new business. But their most recent retention number here dropped from 84% to 77%. For HTC, which is on the right-hand side, they are showing also a trend of 65, 61 to 49%. So a lot of brands are showing possible defections from existing customers, or it could be that they're locked in for multi-year contracts or agreements, or just aren't upgrading or changing phones or plans this year. But certainly things worth noting, and again, if you want to look at the results for specific demos or markets, Captivate's happy to do that for you. Last couple brands here are Samsung. Samsung's got very strong numbers at 65% of their existing customers are considering Samsung in the next 12 months, and that's growth from the last survey of 58%. Google, which is on the right-hand side, is flat at 49% consideration among their existing customers. And that's a look at the loyalty trends we saw. Just to wrap things up today, I wanted to give you a quick summary of some of the major brands that we talked about. Apple, we saw leading the way in consideration, their cool factor, my kind of brand, reputation, and quality. Although one thing to note is that their consideration among existing customers is starting to decrease, and again, that's something to watch. Verizon has a clear advantage in reliability, brand rating strong, but there's a recent dip in consideration, so Verizon's got some good news and bad news in here. AT&T, we saw a steady consideration and brand rating, and leading the way for coverage or availability location. Samsung, we saw some good results for them. But one thing to note is that their brand rating has moved to growth in the average brand rating. So Samsung has some positioning here to do in the United States. T-Mobile, one of the best things they had was their attribute on cost, which is what the industry saw the most growth in, was cost, and T-Mobile had some leadership position there. Also strong customer loyalty or retention, but the quality needs watching. That's something that we saw with T-Mobile possibly decreasing as a quality. Sprint, we saw good consideration and rating. Their cost is strong, but quality and reliability is still below average, and that's something to be watched for Sprint. And then HTC, we saw a recent dip in consideration among their customers too, which is something we watch for HTC. And then finally BlackBerry, we saw decreases across the board there, but they still have reliability and quality position in the industry, and that's something they can take advantage of. And for BlackBerry, it's taking advantage of the position among people that care most about quality and reliability. So the people that care less about cost and more about quality and reliability are typically your higher income adults, your businesses and business decision makers. So BlackBerry still has some good things to take advantage of. So what I'd like to do is remind you all to jot down my name and my number, my email. Send me any requests for any specific information that you may want about your brand or even your competitor's brand, and I'll reach out to you and see what we can do in terms of putting something together for you quickly. Also, if you have a Captivate person that you work with, certainly go through them and ask any questions or follow up. We're happy to provide it. We do this survey approximately every 4 or 5 months, so we'll invite you to the next webinar, and we appreciate you joining us, and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.